Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. You know, I wasn't originally planning on making a video of this. Brienne, she's never seen any other Spider-Man movies other than what she's seen in Civil War and I guess also Spider-Man Homecoming and Infinity War now, right? So that's all your experience of Spider-Man. And so we were just like sitting, getting ready for a Bible study at my house. And while we were killing time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to show you Spider-Man, like the original one, right? I was actually going to show her the Andrew Garfield ones. And then I was like, you know what? No, let's show her the original. Like, you know, like with Sam Raimi's, like Tobey Maguire movies. And we sat down to watch it. And very quickly I realized, dang, this movie is a lot better than I remembered.
Yeah.
And we originally were watching it and she was like, how much attention do I have to pay? Because like if we're making a video about it, I need to pay more attention.
Think about it. Or
yeah. And I was like, you know, you don't have to pay too much attention. We're not going to make a video. But then she got hooked. And she was like, this is a good movie. And then I got hooked, and I haven't seen the movie in like over a decade. And I was like, wow, this is a lot better than I remembered. And so here we are. We're making a video. So what did you think about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man?
Yeah. I told David while we were watching the movie, well, when we first started watching, I was like, wow, this is a really good movie. And then once we got probably like halfway into it, maybe a little over halfway, I was like, I think this might be my favorite superhero movie that I've ever watched. Like, I really, really liked that movie. It was really good. And I think it might be because it was produced like in the early 2000s, and I for some reason tend to like movies that are like more cheesy kind of, I think. So I don't know if maybe that's why, but it was also a really good storyline too. So I think it was a combination of both.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. I was about to ask, okay, if this is your favorite one, why? But that explains it. I agree. I think that really, as the movie was playing, we were watching it, and we also had to pause it for a big chunk because we did like this 2.5 hour Bible study.
Yeah.
But as we were watching it, I was thinking like, why is this movie so good? And I think it's because it does this really good balance of going like it gets really dark, not like super dark. Like sometimes movies get dark just for the sake of being edgy. I don't think it does that. It just handles some pretty like dark material, you know, it deals with like death and like mourning and grief and stuff, but it also is very aware of the fact that it's a cheesy comic book movie. And really, I was telling her, we kind of owe it to X-Men and Spider-Man that we really have a lot of this superhero movies nowadays, because that really kind of kicked off all of this. I don't think we would have the Marvel movies or anything if Spider-Man and X-Men didn't really do very well. And so the movie does a really good job, like you were saying. It does a really good job with the storyline. There's some really good stuff there where I think, honestly, just in watching it, as I was asking, like, why do I like this movie so much? I think you can see how it was treated as it's just a good film in general.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, whenever we go to superhero movies, we're not really asking, is this a good film? We're asking, is this a good superhero movie? Because it's more just about the superhero story, and you don't have as much characterization and stuff. It's more like, was that a fun movie to watch?
Yeah.
Whereas these ones, you actually have really good acting. Tobey Maguire, Willem Dafoe, James Franco, he was actually doing some really good acting and stuff. Kirsten Dunst, all these people, they're really like, they're showing up and they're bringing their A game. They're doing some really good acting. It can be corny at times, but it fits the like movie.
Yeah. And
it's got a good, like, there's good characterization. You actually notice things. Even J. Jonah Jameson, he's the leader, like the head editor of the Daily Bugle. You know, the guy was like, I hate Spider-Man, like all that stuff. Like, he has this great character arc where basically, not really an arc, but his whole thing is, you know, he's like, oh, Spider-Man, is he a hero or a nemesis? Who is he? But then whenever like the Green Goblin attacks him, you get to see that he really is a good guy at heart. A lot of it's just like a facade of him, like he's putting on this thing, like that's just, you know, it's his public image. But whenever the Green Goblin's like, who gives you the photographs? Like, he won't turn Peter Parker over.
Right.
Whereas the way he presents himself otherwise, he seems like a very self-focused person who would give up people. But he's like, no, I don't know who gave me the photographs. And so just all around, the movie was just great. What were your favorite parts about it?
Yeah, I think anytime there was a scene between Peter Parker and the girl's name that I can't
Mary
remember.
Jane.
Yeah.
MJ.
Yes. Anytime a scene between them two, it was great. Let me say, Peter Parker, he's very poetic. Like, he's good with his words. He's just pretty good.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Like I said, I haven't seen this movie in probably over a decade.
Yeah.
And watching it, I was like, dang.
Yeah.
Peter
And
Parker's
with how like cheesy the movie is, you'd think that it would be more cheesy lines, but it actually is like genuinely like good lines. Like, it's something that
Oh yeah, no. Yeah. I was like, dang, I was leaning over here. I was like, I need to memorize this, and then like, in like a year or something, whenever you forgot about the movie, I was like, slide those lines in there because it's like a really good, like he's like talking about, when I look into your eyes, it's like I'm excited yet afraid at the same time, and I don't really know how to feel. All I know is that you inspire me to be a better man. Mm-hmm. I feel strong yet also weak, and she's just like listening to this, and at first, she's asking him, like, what did you tell Spider-Man? Because I think I like Spider-Man. But by the time he's done talking, she's like, dang, I think I like Peter Parker. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, if I was a girl, I'd like Peter Parker too, because that was pretty smooth. Uh-huh. And then she's like, so is that what you said? And he's like, something along those lines. Yeah, and I was like, dang, like, and then Aunt May's over there, like, laying in the hospital bed, and she's like, that's my boy. That's my boy. Uh-huh. And, yeah, I liked really the whole thing with Mary Jane. Mm-hmm. Done really well. Like, there's... Basically, in my mind, because remember, I saw these whenever I was really young. This movie came out when you were 1 year old, mm-hmm. right? It came out in 2002. You were born in 2001. I was 5 years old, mm-hmm. right? No, I was 5 years old. I saw this movie when I was really young. I don't think I saw it in theaters or anything. I saw it while I was young, and basically, my memory is just, like, I was shocked to realize how many scenes I did remember, but I basically just remembered, like, the images of the scenes, right? I didn't remember, like, how it actually played out, mm-hmm. and I think that's where I was like, oh, wow, I remembered almost, like, every scene from this movie. I didn't realize how jam-packed this one movie was. I think a lot going on. I think I almost thought that the scenes I had in my mind were, like, played out from all three movies. Mm. Then I was like, oh wow, no, that's just the first movie, so I'll be interested to see when we watch the other ones, like how much I remember. But so much of it was there, and the Mary Jane thing really was something that was executed a lot better than I expected. Yeah. To where, I mean, obviously, one of the things that does throw you off about the movie is that these are evidently adults who are playing high schoolers. Yeah. But they also do graduate very quickly, so it moves on from that. But when you're looking at the story, you see Peter Parker going from this bumbling kid at the beginning of the movie who can't even get up the courage to, like, talk to MJ. Yeah. To, like, by the end of the movie, she is confessing her love to him, and he is having, like he's already, like, by the halfway point of the movie, he's already comfortable enough to talk to her. Uh-huh. And you're like, wow, so you've already gotten there, and you thought that was the goal. But no, by the end of the movie, she's confessing her love to him, and he's saying, all I have to give you is friendship. And it's heartbreaking, but that goes to the whole theme of the movie, which is with great power comes great responsibility. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is such an iconic, like, just that in of itself should tell you how influential this movie was, mm-hmm. because I think even you, without having seen this movie, recognize that line. Yes. Right? And every Spider-Man incarnation since then has had to have some sort of speech very similar to that. Mm-hmm. The Amazing Spider-Man movies, they don't do it as well. And then in Captain America Civil War, Tom Holland has, like, one little line that's very similar to that. Mm-hmm. But that message is actually really, really good, and they do really good at displaying that theme over the course of the movie. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is because one of our recent videos was over Wonder Woman 1984. Yeah. And they had a theme about truth. And they actually had a few different themes, and they started getting a little bit preachy about it. But it wasn't executed very well because the way that they tried to apply it wasn't that perfect. Whereas the way that Sam Raimi and whoever wrote this movie and stuff, like, just interweaved the whole responsibility theme through the movie, it just worked so seamlessly to where you could see how this, like, kid gets these powers and he feels the need, because his uncle taught him this, like, with great power comes great responsibility, and then his uncle dies. And he had the power to stop his uncle from dying. Yes. But then his uncle died, and he realized, wow, I'm responsible. Mm-hmm. And then he realizes, I've got these powers, which means that I'm also responsible if I don't use them for good. Right. And then he goes and does these things, but by the end of the movie, he realizes that all the people that he allows to get close to him, they get hurt. Mm-hmm. Because Aunt May, she got attacked. Mary Jane got attacked. Norman Osborn, I mean, he was the villain, but he ended up dying. Because of the personal connection that he had with Peter and stuff. And so that's why he ends up rejecting Mary Jane at the end, because with great power comes great responsibility, and I just thought they did such a good job of it. Yeah, they did a really good job. But yeah, so what other thoughts did you have about the movie? Yeah, I think overall, when I think about the movie as a whole, what I really liked about it was, like, the simplicity of it. I think so many movies, especially right now, because we're going through all of the Marvel movies, and I'm being able to compare all of them kind of back to back, a lot of them,
I can't even say that they try and like pack a whole bunch of stuff into it, because this movie packed a lot of stuff into it, but everything made sense and it flowed really nice.
It all served the purpose of the story.
Yes, but I think that in some of them, they try and get like almost too creative with it. You know, like going out in space and these different creatures and like all these different contraptions and weapons and all that kind of stuff. But this is just about, you know, a boy who's living in town gets bit by a spider, and now he has these powers and he has to learn how to control them. Mm. And so I think I really like the simplicity of it. It's easy to follow, but at the same time has a really good plot. It kind of reminds me a lot of like Superman. Mm. Like Superman's the same way. It's just like an ordinary person who develops powers. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that's what I really like about it. Because I also really like Superman. You know, we're going through Smallville and all of that kind of stuff. So I know I really like that. And I was like, okay, well, why do I like that? And how is that the same as Spider-Man? I think they're both very like simple. Mm-hmm. They're still superheroes, and it's still interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something refreshing about kind of, I mean, like you said, I think almost watching this is enhanced by having just been watching the Marvel movies.
Yes.
Because I think there's something refreshing about going back to a universe where being a superhero was still a super thing. Mm-hmm. You know, because now, by the time, whenever you're in the Marvel movies, it's almost like everybody has superpowers. Where it's almost like, it's more of a unique thing if you're still a regular person in the Marvel movies. Because everybody left and right has powers. And that's just a natural side effect. Like, it's really cool to have these movies. Like, to have, like, Endgame, where you have, like, all these superheroes, like, fighting and stuff. That's cool. But it does take away from it, because the more superheroes you add, the less super they become. Because all of a sudden, it's like, well, there's a bunch of superheroes. And so I've always kind of enjoyed the movies where it's like, the universe is separate. And really, that's how most superhero movies were up until Marvel started doing their whole Marvel universe. Because, you know, you have Spider-Man, and he is the big deal. So he's like, you know, everybody's like, oh, Spider-Man. Everybody's talking about Spider-Man. But Spider-Man's not as super whenever you live in a world where the Norse gods are real. And there's this green raging monster who just, like, you know, shows up all the time. You know? So that's why Spider-Man in the Marvel movies, he's more just like he's a side character.
Right.
Whereas in these movies, everybody's like, oh, it's Spider-Man. You know, in the Marvel movies, people will be like, oh, really, Spider-Man? Like, can't we get Iron Man? Can't we get somebody else? Like, we really have to get Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man?
Yeah.
So there's something refreshing about just going to this universe where he is the superhero.
Yeah.
Because it just makes it, the chasm between regular and superhero is just that much bigger. Whereas whenever you have it conflated with, like, all these superheroes, it takes away from the appeal a little bit to me. And so I think it's cool that you can have those movies, but I also appreciate, like you were saying, just the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with you that I like the ones that were, even some of the other Marvel movies that are just kind of focused on one character. I like those better than, like, Guardians of the Galaxy, or ones that have, like, a whole bunch of characters, which, like you said, they are cool. But then I feel like they're almost kind of, like, trying too hard, because they have to start creating new things to keep the story going and stuff. But whenever you just have one character, you have more flexibility with what you can do with the story and the plot and character development. Oh, that's another thing. We really, I think, both like character development. When you have a whole bunch of them, it's hard to keep the stories of all the characters and have enough time without making the movie like 5 hours long. Yeah,
that's what I was about to say. Yeah. Whenever you're, like, if you were to go to sit in for like a 5-hour movie, they could do a lot more, like an Avengers movie. But really, if you're going to an Avengers movie and it's got to be like 2.5, 3 hours, and that's why they're usually longer, because it's hard to fit a lot in there. You're kind of banking off the fact, like, hey, hopefully y'all know who these characters are, and then we're just going to give you a good story. Whereas whenever it's literally just, like, one man gets powers, he's got a love interest, he's got a best friend, he's got an aunt, here's the bad guy. Like, whenever you just got that, you can tell a much more compact story that's much more intriguing, because you can flesh out all these characters. Whereas you get to Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's a really good movie, really funny movie. But there's so many characters, right? And then whenever you get to the Avengers movies, especially like Endgame, well, so you really, I mean, for you, Endgame was the first Marvel movie you saw, right? And so you're going into this, and you don't know really any of these characters. You're just seeing what's happening, and so you have no, like, emotional attachment to any of this, right? Whereas, like, now, whenever we watch Endgame, you'll have a lot more, because you've watched countless hours with all these characters. And you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Whereas with a much more compact story like Spider-Man, you know, you can flesh all these out a whole lot more. And then just, I think there's a reason why Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters, especially in Marvel. Obviously, this movie was not, like, Marvel did not have the film rights for this. Right now, Spider-Man was with Sony, and then same thing with Amazing Spider-Man, and then eventually Marvel, like Disney and Sony would broker a deal wherein Spider-Man could come into the MCU. But in these movies, I've always liked Spider-Man. Along with like Captain America and Superman. Mm-hmm. Mainly just because I like what they stand for, first off. I mean, especially Captain America and Superman. Like, there's their ideals and stuff. Those are things I also stand for, you know. But Spider-Man, I like it because he's a kid, right? And he's relatable. And I don't think he's just relatable to kids because, I mean, in the comics and stuff, he at least does, you know, he gets older. Stuff, he becomes an adult. And even in this, he was a high schooler for the first half of the movie and then he's graduated. But there's something that we can relate to him more than we can say to a lot of the other heroes. Like Iron Man. I can't relate to a billionaire playboy who gets everything he wants. Mm-hmm. Hulk. Well, I'm not a rocket scientist. You know, I like who studies gamma radiation. Yeah. Thor. I'm not a Norse god. Mm-hmm. Captain America. I wasn't born in World War II, and I didn't get injected with the serum and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But Spider-Man, he's just like a regular kid who likes a girl. He gets bitten by a spider, realizes he now has a bunch more powers. And sadly, those powers, while they do give him like the ability to go have fun and really he gets a lot of confidence from it, at the same time there's also this negative side to where he actually distances himself from people and a lot of the things that he wants he can't have because he has this heavy responsibility, right? So he has these convictions where he's like, I can't just sit by and do nothing. But in his conviction to do something, he actually loses a lot of the normalcy that he so longs for, especially when he's younger, right? He's like, like the girl that he's loved since he was in fourth grade, I think they said, right? He's loved her since fourth grade. She kisses him at the end of the movie, and he's like, all I have is friendship to give. Mm-hmm. And that's so sad. Like, even you were like, oh, my heart is breaking for her and him. It's like, you hate that because he wants to be a normal guy, but a spider bit him. And because of his own personal convictions that have been, like, placed into him, he knows, I can't be a normal guy, because to do that would be selfish. And I just think that's a really cool message, right? Because it's just about being selfless, right? He's like, it's with great power comes great responsibility, a great message, and it's especially impactful because we actually learn from it because we relate to him. Yeah. You know, like Iron Man, over the course of the MCU movies, he learns to be selfless as well. But I don't think the message transfers as well over to the audience. Because we don't relate to Iron Man, right? Yeah. I mean, like going into the movies, I'm like, oh, this is a really fun character. Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. plays him amazingly, really to perfection. But, like, I can't relate to that. And so, he has this whole selfless journey, but I don't leave the movie being like, man, I need to be more selfless. Yeah. But whenever you watch Spider-Man, you're like, dang, there's probably ways where I could handle my responsibilities better. Yeah. Right? Like, what powers do I have to help people? Obviously, I can't shoot webs out of my hand, and I can't climb walls, but what other things do I have? Like, what other abilities do I have to help people? Just because he's so relatable, it makes it to where you want to apply it, you know, and you leave, and it's almost like you watched a sermon, and you're like, dang, that was good. That was good. So what did you think about the villain, Green Goblin? What did you think about him?
His costume was interesting. Mm-hmm. Everything I thought had really like good graphics and CGI until he came out, and I was like, okay, now I see the 2000s coming in. Mm-hmm. But I don't mind it because it wasn't 2000, so I was like, okay, I'll let it pass. It's good.
Yeah, well, you got your pass. Once the Green Goblin comes in, I will say that is where the movie it definitely took a more comic booky turn. Yeah. Because up until then, it was just like it really even wasn't that corny. Up until then, but then all of a sudden you do have like this guy in a green goblin suit, like flying around, being like, hey, Spider-Man, and you're like, okay, this is really corny. But then I also showed her the picture of what the Green Goblin looks like in the comics, and I was like, hey, this is what they were working with. They were trying to make this as grounded as possible, so they make it to where, you know, Norman Osborn is working on like some almost like Captain America like stuff where he's trying to create like this super soldier serum almost, and creating this like new military armor. And so that's why it looks like that. For her, she said that it reminded her of Power Rangers, which
I was going to say
I agree. Yeah. It does. It looks like Power Rangers, but they're basically trying to make it as if they're trying to explain it, right? They're trying to ground it to where like this is a possibility, but then they also do embrace the comic booky stuff. He's like, Spider-Man.
Yeah, I kind of appreciate it though. Like, I think it's cool.
Oh, I like that it was self-aware, right? It would have been terrible to me if they had that, but they tried, like nowadays in a movie, if a movie nowadays if this movie were to be made now, they would try too hard to ground it in reality and make it too edgy. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll see that when you get to like the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yeah. Because I actually really enjoy that movie, but I will admit it's not that great of a movie.
Yeah.
And they actually do have the Green Goblin character, and they try too hard almost to make him realistic but edgy. Like they do the same thing they do here, but it's just like it didn't land.
Yeah.
Because they weren't self-aware enough to be like, hey, we're working with comic book material. This is kind of corny. Mm-hmm. Whereas this movie, it was very self-aware. And they're like, okay, we're going to ground it in realism, but also be aware of the fact that this is super kind of lame, right? So, like, they'll have, like, his little, like, eye things come up to where, like, you see his eyes, and you're like, oh, whoa. And then Willem Dafoe, he just hams it up. Whenever he's, like, that scene where he's, like, looking in the mirror talking to himself.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, it was cool because he's, first off, he's a really good actor.
He is.
Like, just the back and forth, it's like, he's like it looks like two different characters, but it is the same actor playing both parts. Yeah. Right? But, at the same time, whenever you just, like, you're so invested into the movie, and maybe this is also due to Sam Raimi's direction or whatever, but you're so invested in the movie that you don't realize how corny it is. Mm-hmm. But as I was watching it, I kind of just tried to, like, zoom out and look at it, and man, like, it's such a caricature of a person. He's just like, you have to be evil, like you must be evil. He's like, no, I don't want to be evil. You must be evil. And, like, it just goes back and forth, and zoomed out, you're like, that's so corny. Yeah. But in the movie, you're like, yeah, I'm buying it. I'm buying it, but it's just because it was self-aware enough, and that actually drew you into it. Yeah. And so, really, really fun. Do you have any final comments about Spider-Man?
I really liked it. I think that one is at the top of my list. I think that one's
list.
That one's in the number one spot.
Above all the Marvel movies?
I think so.
Whew,
I think it might be.
High praise.
Yeah, this one was really good. And we didn't even plan to watch it. Like, it was just kind of like a spur of the moment. We weren't going to, like, film a video or anything. We're like, hey, let's watch Spider-Man. Like, we just put it on to have something on. And we're like, he was like, I'll just show it to you. And now it's at the top of my list.
Look at that.
Now I need to watch all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say this. Spider-Man 2 is considered by some to be one of the greatest superhero movies ever.
Okay.
So it might even top this one. We'll see though. We'll leave that up to you. I hope that doesn't like change. I hope that doesn't inform your opinion, but we'll have to see. And I guess we'll just have to make another video for Spider-Man 2.
I think we will.
Because, we made one for this one. So, there's our thoughts about Spider-Man. Let us know what you thought about it. It's a really, really good movie. And if you haven't seen it in a while, go rewatch it. Because I don't think I appreciated it enough whenever I saw it when I was younger. Mm-hmm. But having gotten a little bit older, and maybe just because we've been watching a lot of movies lately, I think I appreciated it, like how much it was treated like an art, right? Mm-hmm. Because especially they're trying to launch this whole superhero genre, and so they're having to put their hearts into this because, like, if this doesn't work, it just flops. Whereas because it was crafted so well, people realized, wow, this superhero thing, like, that can be a thing. And now we have all these Marvel movies, but now they just pump them out so much that they're not, I was telling you this while we were watching the movie, they're not crafted as beautifully and with that as much intention, it seems like. Some of them are. Like, every now and then you'll have one where you're like, oh, that director had a clear vision. Yeah. But it seems like really with this one, it was just like, they weren't just trying to make a good superhero movie, they were trying to make a good film. Because at the time, superhero movies were not a thing. At the time, there was action movies. And they just said, we're going to take a comic book character and make a good action movie out of that comic book character. Mm-hmm. Whereas now, superhero movies is its own genre. And so they're saying, we just want to make a good superhero movie. And so it's like, okay, we need action, we need characters, we need a cool story, cool direction, cool colors, stuff like that. Yeah. This one actually has good acting, good direction. Like, just like some things where, like, the emotion and, like, the music and stuff, it's perfect. Like, I remember, like, Peter calls Mary Jane to, like, check because he realizes the Green Goblin knows who he is because Aunt May's in the hospital and they're talking about it. And he's like, oh, no. So he goes out and he calls Mary Jane. Mm-hmm. And then the Green Goblin answers the phone. Yeah. And then, like, it just kind of, like, zooms in on Peter's face. Uh-huh. And, like, just, like, the direction, it was, like, good, and, like, the music building up. It's like, this is just a good movie.
Oh, yeah.
And so I appreciated that. It was refreshing, and it could just be that it's heightened because we've been watching the Marvel movies, but
maybe.
Overall, really good movie. It is now her favorite Marvel movie. Not her favorite superhero movie in general.
Yes.
And so we'll have to see if we can top it. Mm-hmm. But that being said, there was my, like, 5-minute long outro. Now I'm done. Now I'm off my soapbox. Now I'm done. Uh-huh. There's our thoughts about Spider-Man 2002. I'm David.
And I'm Brienne.
And we will see you all later. Yeah. Bye.